where service is the jewel in the rock of attainment.
This is Ann in Southern Arizona, and the Heart, welcoming you to Hollow Earth Network and our interactive call with Zora from Hollow Earth. We're in our third year. Isn't that amazing? We're in our third year, and we have learned so much. For those of you that are new, I'll very quickly, to our speakers, I have Zaria and I have Peter located. I don't have Quasar. I've been watching for her, so usually we've gone to using two telephones with Zaria and Quasar, which really has worked out wonderful. We've had good sound and clear words, no clipping, so that they can each speak directly into the phone. I know it's more convenient for them to share a phone, but for us to hear what they're saying, the other method really works. For those of you that are new, just a quick overview. How do we speak to Zora in Hollow Earth? Well, back in 1947, Admiral Byrd made his historic flight into Hollow Earth and saw this highly advanced technology, this highly advanced and loving civilization that has been so much wanting to help us in our desperate attempt to survive up here on the surface, but they had been prevented from communicating with us. So Admiral Byrd said, well, when I get back, I'm going to tell the world. That didn't happen. Admiral Byrd was given what we call a gag order and eventually institutionalized to prevent the news from reaching those of us on the surface that there's a much better way to survive, and we were being managed. The message didn't come through, and that was in 1947. And 5 years later, in 1951, Zora asked his two children, Zaria, and I think his twin sister's name is Zariah. Of course, I haven't had a chance to visit with her, but asked if they would be willing to be deposited up here on the surface in one of our surface bodies, to give up their 14-foot stature for a small little toddler up here in a 3D body, that he would have a communication link, and they agreed to do that. And that happened in 1951, and that whole story has just recently been told by Zaria in these last few episodes, which you can listen to. It's a wonderful story, and we're still continuing Zaria's story. How do we speak to his father, Zora? Well, they very conveniently just swap bodies. It's as simple as that. This allows Zaria to inhabit Zora's body in Hollow Earth, while Zora pops in to Zaria's 62-year-old Earth body now and speaks to us on the telephone using all the surface equipment that is waiting for him by way of his son's body. They just trade bodies, and it's very, very convenient. It works beautifully, and we're in our third year now. So I don't want to take any more time than that. All the history is there. If you go to hollowearthnetwork.com, our very comprehensive website is there, and on recorded calls, you can start at the beginning as we all did and grow with us and build the same foundation of understanding. This is the way we all learned. Many people have just stopped and started at the beginning and listened all the way through until we moved to Blog Talk Radio, and that was last April. I believe it was that we moved to Blog Talk Radio, and all those episodes are also archived. So it's a wonderful learning experience preparatory to our ascension. The better prepared we are and knowledgeable, the more we can help those that we love. And that's what these calls are all about. So with that, Quasar, let me see if I see you here. Let me talk to Zaria a minute. Zaria, your line is open. Does Quasar have her phone on?
Oh, yes. She's good. She's dialing in now.
Oh, here, I see it now. I see it. I'm going to give her a label. And I have Peter's line located. Let me get the... Okay, now I have Quasar located. All righty. I'm going to turn this over to Quasar, who will be guiding us through another very informative narrative from Zarea. And also we will be enjoying, just as soon as Quasar introduces him, Peter, who has been with us all these almost 3 years now, Peter Olson, who is our senior advisor up here on the surface. Peter is highly advanced in science and cosmic science, and he's sort of the bridge to us. And still, it's hard to keep up with Peter, but I have your line located, Peter. And Quasar, I'm going to open your line, turn this over to you, and we're really looking forward to a beautiful call today. So here is Quasar, partner and twin flame to Zarea. Hi, Quasar.
Good morning. Hi there, Anne, Lady Nada.
Yeah.
How are you today?
Just beautiful, thank you.
Good. Before we start, I had a question. Is Catherine going to be with us today?
I don't know. I've been watching for her, and she usually labels herself when she comes in. She is traveling to Edmonton. She's starting her Healing for Ascension tour, and she's en route to Edmonton, but she was hoping the situation would provide for her to be able to join us. But so far, I haven't seen her. She usually labels herself when she comes in, and I also know of her phone number. But at the present time, I just scanned again while I was talking. I don't see her.
Okay.
So,
All
but
right.
that's what's going on with Catherine.
Okay.
She's on her way to Edmonton.
Oh, wonderful. If she doesn't come online later on, Lady Nada, would you like to give us an update then on what she's up to with our tours, etc.? Okay.
Yes, I can do
All
that
right.
for her.
Okay. Well, good day to everyone out there in our network land and all around the world. And today is another fabulous, fabulous day of all kinds of changes that are appearing, all kinds of changes that are going to be fruitful for all of us. But before we start, and as we start, I'd like to be able to introduce to you our beloved brother, and I call him our spiritual enlightenment person, and that would be Peter Olson, or Tartus, as we call him. So, Tartus, are you there?
I am here.
Wonderful. Well, last week, or 2 weeks ago, Peter, you had spoken to us about the difference between loving light and light. And that was quite inspirational and enlightening. Could you tell, what will you be speaking with us today about?
Well, I'm actually going to bridge on that and clarify the difference between computers, brains, and minds, and the difference between observation, experience, and thinking.
Okay, well, go ahead and take it away. Sounds very interesting.
Thank you, Quasar. The difference between observation and between experience and between thought is enormous. And they are very precise, all three. Thought comes from a brain. And we have a reptilian brain in the back of our skull and a logical brain, or storage vault, as Zora calls it, in the front of our skull. But they are both brains, so they think. If we ask ourselves what is the difference between the heart-mind and the soul-mind, the heart-mind being in the center of the chest, the soul-mind being in the center of the skull, the difference is those two minds experience, and our brains think. So that might sound minor, but it is absolutely major. The brain, another name for the brain, what could be another name for the brain? And many of you are saying computers, and that is absolutely correct. Computer thinks, uses very complex algorithms or many lines of code, but basically it thinks. And our brain is still more powerful than any computer that exists today. Our brain is an amino acid computer, and it's very fast. The computers of today, the fast ones, are called associative, which means they can do many things at the same time, but they can't begin to compare to a brain. The difference between a brain and a computer and a chip. What is the difference between a brain and a computer and a chip? Well, first of all, let's talk about the types of chips that have been removed, and many of us have seen on the internet videos of this. There are silicon chips that are removed from the brain or other parts of the body, but it's a computer. There are amino acid chips that are smaller, but they're computers. And there are etheric chips that are not visible in this dimension, but they are a computer. Now, many of you might have seen the piece that I wrote on reptilian remnants. That was showing why it might take a little longer for the RV to happen. Reptilian remnants are not known by those of us on this dimension and those of us in the dimension beyond. And the only way to find them is to do something. And then they get activated and you clean it up. And then you activate again and they get cleaned up. And pretty soon they're all gone. And that's really the process we're going through now with the RV. So back to the basics. There are computers that are really the same as brains. There are implants that are silicon, that are amino acid, and that are etheric. The reptilians were around for millions of years, and they basically hacked. We've all heard that term, hack. Our computers by using the back doors in the reptilian brain. And while they were here doing things which lasted for millions of years and ended the 22nd of August, 2013, they left behind many lines of code, lock lines of code, and created additional brains that do things that they want us to do, but we don't want them to do it. But they did it in a way where we can't find them. How many of you have ever had the experience of saying you would do something, and then when the actual decision comes, you do something else? Or somebody else says they will do something, but when the actual decision comes, they do something else. Well, that's either between past life beliefs that we're holding that we haven't gotten in touch with, or reptilian remnants. It's that simple. Now, back to we can experience, we can think, we can observe. We've pretty much covered we can think. We use computers, we use brains, because brains are computers to do that. We can observe. How many of us have had children and we absolutely knew what was going to happen, but we really couldn't do anything about it? Or we tried to do something about it and eventually realized that that just doesn't work. That's observing, and in some cases that's all we're doing, and in other cases we try to interfere. Well, the only difference between that situation of being a parent and the situation of the divine realm that is working with us is that the divine realm knows they won't interfere, because they operate under the prime directive of no interference. That's the only difference. But they can't do it for us. They can't raise our vibrations for us. We have to do that ourselves. And they can't change our behavior. We have to do it ourselves. They can't find our unconscious beliefs held from past lives. We have to do it ourselves. they can't point out our reptilian remnants. We have to do it ourselves. So that's it. That is the observation, thinking, and experiencing. And we think using a brain or a computer. We observe using our mind, which is a portal plus a computer. So we have a heart mind. That's where we experience. We have a soul mind in the middle of our head. That's also where we experience. And our soul mind accesses loving light. It does not access light. Light is manipulated and created using our brains. And so you can see eventually we bring those things in synchronization and we no longer produce contaminated light. Loving light cannot be contaminated, but light can be contaminated. And eventually, as we synchronize ourselves, we no longer produce contaminated light. So it's 6 simple factors, and it really contains the essence of the process we're going through now, along with those in the divine realms. And that's it.
Well, that wasn't just that's it. I think that was quite beautiful. And from your point of view, you have simplified it. Well, maybe not simplified it, but you've explained it pretty thoroughly, Peter, as to how all of that comes together for all of us. And I think from my point of view, where we are presently is still be able to change those behaviors from many past lives, and to know that we take full responsibility of our thoughts as well as our behavior and our actions. And that's
Quasar, are you on speakerphone or are you speaking into the mic?
Sorry about that.
All the difference in the world. Okay, thank you. We don't want to miss any of your words, and it was a struggle. Thank you.
Was that? Did I need to repeat that at all, or no?
No, but it was an effort to listen. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Anyways,
okay.
I guess the gist of what I was trying to say is what Peter had explained was done very thoroughly and so full of spiritual inspiration and enlightenment all together, all in one. And that for us, it comes down to us with our free will to be able to clear and cleanse and stay focused on our loving, what he calls our loving light, and understand what the difference is between loving light and just plain light. So, and as far as for today, all of that really, we are still there in that struggle between our free will, which is part of the light where it's contaminated, versus loving light and staying in the loving light of where we are ascending towards. So we'll talk more about that, I think, later, and I'm sure that Zora will have more to discuss, perhaps maybe in that area. And we want to thank Tartus Peter for all of his wonderful, insightful inspirations for today.
Really well.
And Peter, I'm leaving your line open, so if during the rest of the show something comes up that you could add some enlightenment to, your line is open. You will be able to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for these wonderful words of wisdom. Okay, well, Catherine is still not here with us, so Zaria, are you here?
Yeah.
Okay, so before you start, I would like to say that 2 weeks ago, Zaria, as Anne said, that was chapter 3, and now we're going into episode 4 of his experiences while he was in Area 51, or experiences while he was here, while he has been here on the surface. He spoke last time about time travel and how he was able to go through a portal of light to move into the 5th dimension, and where he was able to describe what New York City was like in the year 2030. Is that right, Zaria?
Yes.
Yes, and then of course, then you talked as well about the grays, and that what they wore is really how they are is really a suit.
Yes.
Right, and what was that suit? What was the purpose of the suit that they wore?
To keep them protected from the elements or the pollutants in the atmosphere in their future timeline.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Well, that was very, very. I mean, no one has ever heard of these stories, and this is a wonderful experience for us to hear secondhand from you, so that we can understand better what life was like in the future. And now maybe you could tell us more about what we don't really still understand is understanding the dimensions of in the inner hollow earth world, as well as in the beyond our particular surface, into the other, into the other galaxies or into the other planets. So today, Zaraya, I think we were talking about that you were going to be talking about Agartha. Could you just give us the information about what Agartha is, what it means, where it is, and the people, et cetera, et cetera? Could you do that for us today as you continue on this episode?
Okay. The Agarthans are in the crust of the Earth. Your planet is, as you know, is hollow, and it has a crust of 800 miles thick. And on the other side of the 800 miles is hollow Earth. In the Earth's crust, you have what is termed as the Agarthan Network. The Agarthan Network is Agarthan cities in the Earth's crust. And these, some of the cities would be termed as elves, leprechauns, gnomes, things of that nature, fairies. A lot of people think that all these are mythical creatures or mythical beings, and I can tell you for a fact they're real. And when you were a child, you probably even saw some fairies in the wooded areas. And the elemental beings, mythical creatures that you've seen in fairy tales and movies, in most cases a lot of it's Hollywood, but a lot of it is not Hollywood. It's actual, factual information where they got their information to make these movies and these cartoons and stuff like that. They've got them from the writings of people that have written about these elemental beings, and they are alive and well in the Earth's crust. In Iceland, they have the government of Iceland has a law stating that you can't build on a certain place unless you get permission from the elves, and this is a law that's written in Iceland. So some of you in your Scandinavian countries, or like Ireland and Scotland and stuff like this, these beings are real, and the people of that country respect them because they know they're real, even though they never talk about it much. But when you're there and you talk to the people that live there, they will tell you about these beings that they have in their country that they have a high regard and a high respect for. In fact, in one area, there's a thing called Elves Rock, and they've actually built a highway around it. They didn't take and remove the rock like they would here in America. They built their highways around it. That's how much they respect their heritage and their elementals that they have there. The same thing with the Agarthans. The Agarthans being a race of beings in the crust of the earth. And they're also responsible here lately for clearing up and cleaning up the oceans and the waterways and streams and rivers and getting rid of the pollutants that we are continually dumping into them. Not us as a whole, but just the big factories and things of that nature. They are continually cleaning up the mess that we're creating. So, and they'll continue to do that because that is That's their position. Now,
Saraya?
the people of, yes?
Well, I don't mean to interrupt, but when you say they're able to clean up all of our pollutions and the air,
Doing it now.
They're doing that now. Well, a couple of questions is, how are they able to do that, and what dimension are they coming from, and what do they look like?
Well, they're tall. They're tall beings. They're not really, super tall, but they're tall. They're taller than the average human, and they have the ability. You've probably heard about the square boxes on the coastlines that were placed in where on the beaches or right offshore, and these boxes were humming. They were making noise, and of course the military went in there and tried to move them, and they couldn't move them, and because they're so heavy, and then when they were going to they cleaned up a certain area of the coastline, and then they would just basically lift up off the ground and reposition themselves in another area. And people had witnessed them watching them do this, and they said, this is really crazy. We can't, with all the moving equipment we have, we can't pick them up. But yet they just lift up off the ground and relocate to another location. So they know that there's an intelligence behind it, but they don't know what to do about them or how to to move them, and they can't, because once they are planted, they're planted, and you're not going to move them no matter what. But these are devices that the Agarthans have placed on the surface to clean up the pollutants in the oceans. They act sort of like a vacuum almost, and they separate the pollutants from the water and basically just suck them into these boxes. And once they have a full capacity, they are transferred to a larger receptacle, and they're launched into space. So the pollutants are taken from the Earth completely off the surface and deposited into space, where they are collected by a ship that takes it elsewhere. So that's the process.
Well, so are those boxes still? Are they still around in on the globe?
Yes, they are. They're just below the surface of the sand. Before they were on the surface, and people were noticing them and going out and taking pictures of them and stuff like that. And but the people that went out there to move them can no longer see them, because they have planted themselves underneath the sand, and they are still cleaning up the areas. In one case in I think it was Long Beach, one of these university guys was doing a study on the pollutants in the ocean and the area where he lived, and before he had done this, the oceans looked like they were polluted, and a lot of garbage and stuff up on the beaches there. So he went out and he was expected to get some of this polluted ocean to do a report on, and discovered that the area where he went to was clean. There was no pollutants in the water. It was fresh, clean. And he discovered that he didn't have any polluted ocean to base his report on. So this is just a couple of instances that are, things that are taking place on your surface. People at the Agarthans, they have a unique way of paying for services or skills. They don't do it with monetary substance. They do it in a barter and a trade system. They have skills, and each skill is traded for something else. And so they don't have a cash society as we do on the surface. They have a barter and trade, services for services. It's not like pay $100 or $1,000 for somebody to come in and clean up your landscape or whatever. It's all done in barter and trade, and it's agreed upon system that is better than what we have on the surface. It's like it's a cashless society, but they don't have credit cards like they do on the surface. But they do have a is a cashless society, meaning they don't use monetary substance to pay for things. It's all done joyfully and happily for the greater good. And that's exactly how it will be on the surface in the not-too-distant future.
So as far as their civilization and their population, it sounds like they're pretty advanced already.
Oh, yes, they are.
They're already in the fifth dimension?
They're in fifth dimension.
Okay.
But they can step into this dimension, which is a lower fifth, which is where you guys are. But they can step into this dimension and can be seen. People have seen them. These tall beings just sort of laying in pastures and things like this. And people have seen them, and they've made reports about them. Of course, everybody thought they were crazy because, you just don't find giants that are, in plain sight.
So they basically look like us. Is that right?
Yeah, but they're taller.
They're just taller. And they have, do they have like different cultures as well, like we do on the surface?
Different cultures?
Yeah, different cultures and races.
Well, they're all one. They're like one civilization, if you will. They're not separated by countries or language. They're all one, so they all communicate as one.
Right.
No, they don't all look alike. But I mean, they look different. Some of them in some parts of the world, like in the in Ireland, they put on the persona of leprechaun, things like that. They have sort of like a greenish skin tone, more greenish than turquoise, but and it's very, very light. They have, and in this other areas of the world, they just look like Native American, except extremely tall. Or in Japan, the Orient, they look like very, very tall Oriental people. But they look like the people on the surface. They mirror the people on the surface, but they're taller, stature, much, much taller than you would normally see in that country.
Could you also explain, Zaria, as far as living arrangements? And, it's probably difficult for people to realize that under our surface, we have an atmosphere, we have clouds and skies. So in Agartha, in the inner earth, what does that look like? I mean, do they have skies there? I mean, where in the world do they get the sun? Could you describe that environment for us?
In the crust of the earth, you have light inside the earth as well, phosphorus, and it is like an artificial light in the earth's crust. And where the cities are, they have shafts that go into the hollow of the earth and absorb the light from the central sun, which is channeled through these corridors and brings light to their hydroponic gardens that are in the crust of the earth. So they have a means to bring light from the central sun into their cities that are in the earth's crust. And the other cities that don't have that type of access, they have the natural lighting from the minerals that are inside the earth's crust. So it's like they have a very advanced lighting system that they have in like the tunnels that the shuttles go through. The tunnels are made of a crystalline substance that is circular, like a tube, like a clear tube inside the crust of the earth, which lines the tunnels that these shuttles go through. And they have a very, very advanced subterranean shuttle system that's far beyond anything close to what we have on the surface. It's sort of like a subway, except it's more advanced. They don't have the subway system that we have on the surface. They're all concrete. You know, the tunnels that go through mountains and stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
They're all concrete. They're not
right.
made of a crystalline material. They're made of man-made elements,
right.
concrete
Steel.
or
mm-hmm.
steel or whatever. But these other tubes that are placate underneath the surface of the earth are smooth as glass, and they're a crystalline material. Therefore, they also have a consciousness. Crystals have a consciousness. When you get quartz crystals, you buy in stores and stuff like this, you'll find that if you have them in your house, you have an immense energy field in your house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because the crystals are alive. They're not just a crystal. They
mm-hmm.
have a consciousness, and they're alive. They grow. People that have bought crystals, that have had them in their homes, in some instances, they wouldn't put them in a room or in a closet or on a shelf. They went back a few years later, and the thing was twice as big as it was when they set it up. They grow, okay,
mm-hmm.
because they have their own essence, their own,
Right. They are alive.
They are alive, and
right.
and they're record keepers. So
yeah.
whenever you have a crystal, like in the caves close to the surface, there's a lot of crystal caves in different countries, and these things are gigantic. And people have been inside them and gotten their crystals to sell and stuff like this, like in Brazil and South America. And these crystals are continually growing and continually giving off energy. They are what would you say? They're sort of like the lifeline to Mother Earth, and sort of like veins, if you will. Like we have veins in our bodies where blood goes through, and in the earth you have veins of crystal that is also a sort of like an artery or the system of the earth.
The earth is composed of much crystal, right?
A lot.
Does it encompass the world?
Yeah, it's all you find, and whenever you dig down into the ground, you'll find crystal everywhere.
Okay.
And some caves you can go into, you'll find crystal formations that are just look like big, long, huge, sometimes 100 feet long and 20 feet wide or bigger, of quartz crystal. And these things, there's some caves in China, there's some caves in Japan, over in Europe and stuff like this that people go into, and they've taken pictures of them. You see them on the internet, and they're standing on top of these crystals that are huge in size, and you've seen them, I'm sure. And getting back to the Garthians, as I say, Garthians or Garthians, there's a couple different ways to state it. They live in the inner earth. Inner earth meaning the crust of the earth. In the hollow of the earth, you have the hollow earth, and that's where the cities of hollow earth, such as Yehu and the city of Eden and the city of Shambhala the Greater, there's different other cities inside the hollow earth. And, of course, they have the blessing of the central sun to shine on their lands inside. And, of course, they have a subtropical paradise inside hollow earth. 73 degrees constant. That's ideal condition.
Hey, Zaraya?
Yeah.
I was thinking perhaps maybe we could talk about Hollow Earth, and that was a good opening introduction to talk about Hollow Earth, but I was thinking we could do that in a couple of weeks. I was wondering if we could continue just to talk about your experiences that you had going into Agartha.
Well, the first city I went into, but it was associated with the Agarthans, was the city of Telos beneath Mount Shasta. When I was at Area 51, I got this call on my office phone telling me to come down to the 27th level for a meeting. So I got on the elevator and went down to the 27th level. Normally, you don't have clearance for the 27th level because it's the fresh level that they're working on down in Area 51. But I was called, so I said, well, why am I coming down there? And they said, because you were asked for by name. So I go down there, get in the elevator, go all the way down to the 27th level. The door's open, and I walk into a cave. And there's a couple MPs standing there. And they escort me into the tunnel there and up to the point where my superiors are standing. And I said, okay, who asked for me? And then they point to these two beings standing next to this bullet-shaped object in this tunnel. And I said, you guys are really, really advancing in your boring machines. This is remarkable. And they said, that's not ours. And I said, what? And they said, no, that's not one of ours. And so I said, well, who asked for me? And they said, those two people there. And they were tall, very tall. So I walk over to them and I said, okay, you asked for me by name. What do you want? They said, we would like to take you on a journey if you would like to go. And I turn around, look at my superiors, and they're shaking their heads up and down, yes. So I said, all right, yes, I will go. And they said, step inside. And I stepped into this bullet-shaped object. The side door opened, slid upward, and I stepped into it. And I go to sit down, and I notice the chairs are huge. I mean, I feel like a little kid sitting in one of these chairs. But strap myself in. And the door silently shuts down. And my two hosts turned and looked at me, and they said, welcome, Zaraya. I go, excuse me? Welcome, Zaraya. I said, okay. Did you ask for me by name with that name? And they said, no, we asked for it by your circus name. Oh, okay, fine. And I said, where are we going? And they said, you were going to the city of Telos, beneath Mount Shasta, California. I said, okay. So I sat down, and then this thing starts moving. And it did. I didn't have a feeling of movement, but I could see it was moving out through the side views on it. From the outside, it looks like a solid thing. From the inside, you can see out the sides, like a two-way mirror almost. From the outside, you see yourself reflected back to you, but on the inside, you can actually see outside, out the side portions of the object. And this thing started moving, and it got moving faster and faster. Pretty soon, it was just a blur on the outside vision. And we went through these tunnels so fast that but you don't feel the G-force at all, as you do on the surface trains and stuff like that, or aircraft. But this thing was, it just seemed like it was just, you couldn't really put, when you look in the viewer out with the, so I say windshield, out with the transparent front, I could see where we were going. Of course, you could see that coming, but as it off to the sides, it was like a blur. You're looking straight ahead, you can actually see down the tunnel, and this thing was moving. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to wager to say how fast it was moving because it was going extremely fast. Next thing I know, we're stopping, and as we stopped, the door slid open, and I stepped out onto this platform, and I'm looking at a city, a crystalline, domed city. And I said, where are we? And they said, you are in the city of Telos. I step out, and as I'm stepping out, a lady is stepping onto the transportation vehicle. And she looks at me, and she nods her head, and I say, hello. And she said, hello back. And I said, who are you? And she says, I am Charula. Okay, that's nice. have yourself a nice journey. And so I stepped off to the side, and she got on. And this other entity is standing there, comes up to me, and he says, I'm here to take you on a tour. I am a Dhamma. And this gentleman looked like, well, he looks like his pictures almost that you see of a Dhamma, but not quite the same dress. It's long turquoise style toga type thing, and he has a tunic, and he looks like a young man. He looks like he's in his, early 20s maybe, and long hair, and golden long hair, and extremely, very piercing blue eyes, or almost turquoise eyes. And you can just feel the love and the compassion coming from this being standing in front of you. So we got on these platforms that were like a little disc that you stand on, and it's got a rail around it that you hold on to. And this thing just glides across the top, along the surface of the ground. And so we got on two of these, and so he got on one, I got on the other, and it was like my own little private little conveyance thing here. And there was no sidewalks, as you would term sidewalks. They were more of a clear, crystalline substance, and we were just gliding across the top of them and into the city. Of course, the city was not built like a city on the surface because it was under a dome, and you could see out the top of the dome, and you could see rock on top of the dome, almost right onto the dome. And that was the ceiling part of or the upper peak of Mount Shasta. Later on, I'll tell you about the clear elevator tube that goes to the top, up to the very top of the mountain itself, either the Twin Peaks at the top, and where we exited there and stood there on top of the peak of Mount Shasta, looking down on the city of Shasta. So that was a little later time. Went to different areas of the city, and I wasn't restricted to from going anywhere. I was every time we would come up to somebody, they would just nod their heads and in sort of like a greeting, and didn't say anything, but they just nod their heads in gesture of welcome. So we continued on our tour, and the different layers of the different levels of the city. There was 5 levels, and took me up to the hydroponic garden on the very top level, where they have their gardens. And there's also people in Telos that came from the surface, from the surface of Mount Shasta, and they're living there. But yet they're allowed to leave if they want and go back to the surface. But as they have plants there that have different tastes to them, and they said, you may find this really interesting. And they says, take a bite of this plant. I took a bite of this plant, and it tasted like turkey meat, but it was a plant. And I said, how is this possible? And they said, well, we grow our own food, and people from the surface still have the desire for meat. So these plants fulfill that desire. They give the illusion or the taste of whatever they would like to have. So when they say they grow their own meat or they grow their own food or whatever it is, it's not a meat, it's a plant, but it puts on the persona of whatever you desire to have. And that's
quite
the same way it is. Yes, it is.
So for example, we just had Thanksgiving yesterday, And so I wonder what turkey would look like as a plant.
Well, it's just
would it be
plant.
green, you think, but it tastes like turkey?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Like big fat leaves, you know, and you take and you cut it, and you eat it, and it tastes like turkey, or it tastes like steak, or it tastes like whatever, but it's not actual meat. It's an actual plant.
And you're saying that this is primarily for the people that are that have come to Inner Earth from the surface, because the Inner Earth people, along with the Hollow Earthians, they are all vegetarian.
Are vegetarian. Yes, they are.
Okay.
But they accommodate the people from the surface. Later on, of course, you will be sort of like what would be termed as weaned off of that, because you go into a complete vegetarian diet. And of course, this is a vegetarian diet, even though it is a plant, but it can give off the flavor of whatever you would be eating on the surface. So it's really, really unique and remarkable how they would do that, but I never asked them to explain it. It's just that they grow their own meat or their own food. And same way when in Hollow Earth, it's the same as that. But like I said, the people in Hollow Earth and the gardens are all vegetarian.
Mm-hmm.
No, actually vegan. They're not vegetarian. They're vegan. But anyway, and they said that the plants give you the same. Some plants give you the same nutrients as steak, even on the surface.
You're talking about protein.
Yeah, protein. Give you
Primarily.
protein, same kind of protein that the meat would give you, the plants can give you too.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you study your herpetology or whatever, I think that's what it's called, study of plants.
Herbology? Mm-hmm.
Herbology, right. In the tropical islands, there's a lot of plants there, and a lot of these plants have the same nutrients as a 16-ounce steak, or whatever. But you won't get fat from it. But anyway, it's a complete vegetarian diet or vegan diet, in whichever case it may be. They're at Telos. It showed me their manufacturing center where they manufacture products and things like this for commerce. And it was interesting because they utilize, it's all with Mother Nature. It's not in hemp. You can take hemp and you can process it, and it'll be stronger than steel. And you can make things from that. You can make homes, or you can make whatever you want. They're just now touching the surface of that in Canada, where they're using hemp to build homes.